Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Without further ado, I am going to plunge right in because I have a lot on my plate and I have house guests whom I have been ignoring because I have had other obligations to attend to. So I am going to plunge in right now, and hopefully you are going to enjoy this. I have to tell you, it's first of all personal, and then it goes on to things which I think you will find even more interesting, which will be about the royals, etc., etc., with one or two issues to be addressed. But Maria Kovacs says, and I'm going to start out with Ascot, because I realized that actually I can give people a glimpse of things that they would never otherwise get a glimpse of, including what happens to the carriages and horses after they disgorge the king and the Queen and the royal party, because they pass right by me. So, and I took a little clip of that amongst other things. So, greetings, dear Lady C, Maria Kovacs says, and precious puppies. You looked smashing in those pictures at Ascot. Thank you. I do try. Question: can you please post pictures of Ladies' Day in your car park and give background information about how it started and what it's about? As an American, I can only guess that it's a fancy fest. Thank you. Well, it is actually unique. When the late Queen revamped Ascot and turned it from an old traditional racecourse into this modern phantasmagoria that it now is, and revamped the royal enclosure, because in the old Ascot in the old Ascot, just general enclosure, we had half and the public had half. And now we were reduced to about an eighth, and everybody objected, and we now have Royal Ascot sections. So maybe we are now a third or a quarter, but we're no longer an eighth, which quite frankly is as it should be, because I've got to tell you, they're not giving away any of this for nothing. It has become a massive money-making enterprise for the monarch who owns the racecourse, which was originally started by Queen Anne. So the monarch himself, and previous to that, the monarch herself, owns Ascot Racecourse, and the whole thing is done by a company on behalf of the monarch. Well, Ladies' Day used to be the day. I mean, I've been going to Ascot now for 48 years, and I've only ever missed one Ladies' Day, when I had to go to Italy to do something with one of Silvio Berlusconi's companies on behalf of one of my books. I forget which year it was. But anyway, I had to cancel my picnic. But my picnic is a little bit of a tradition. And friends drop in. And last year I said, I'm not doing, I can have it, but I'm not doing any work for it again. And my boys said they would do it. Well, my son, that's the moth. My son, Dima, was stuck in London, but my son Misha, who was down here, helped me to prepare. And then I have a house guest from Italy called Chris Eggar, and she also helped me. It's a lot of preparation. Next year, I'm on strike because it's so exhausting. Putting that aside, it was great fun. I will post some pictures. I will maybe tell you who one or two of the people are. They are all fairly well-known people socially, but most of them, if not, except for Liz Brewer, who is one of the doyens of society PR in this country. One of the other doyen is Thierry Mackay, but Liz was there with Vimla Lalvani, whose ex-husband Gulu used to take out the Princess of Wales, Diana, not this one. Oh, let's see who else was there. Well, loads of people. I'm not going to go too much into them. I'll just show the photographs. And of course, my dear Nielsen, who battles for me at Ascot every year and sometimes elsewhere. I love Nielsen. He's been with me for years. I just love him. There's nothing like extended family, not Meghan and Harry style, my style. You know, where people are appreciated and they appreciate one, and there's the human element. So I'm going to post a picture of Nielsen and me, and I have to tell you, I was not on a very great form because I have been suffering from delayed concussion, which has meant that I've not quite been myself, and I should have been resting all week, and my head has practically not hit the pillow. But it was all good fun. And so I took a few pictures, and my sons, of course, Dima and Misha, were both there, and we were photographed together. And then after the King and Queen and the royal party are disgorged, the carriages come right by where my car parking space is. And I thought, actually, that might be interesting for people to see. So I did a video of it. So hopefully you will find that interesting. It is unique. When they changed it, an awful lot of the old guard said, this is awful for the first 2 years when you were walking to the royal enclosure, which was so small, and so it forced you to spend much of the time outside of the royal enclosure. And people would be coming up to you looking to see your name. I mean, one felt like a performing seal in a circus. But that's all stopped, thank God. But it's become too slick for comfort. You now have to provide your, what is it? You have to have a special electronic pass, and you have to have a photo ID, which fortunately they'd never asked me for, because it's sort of ridiculous to say, oh, hello, Lady Colin, how are you? Then can I see your photo ID? Because the photo ID is to prevent people handing on their badges to friends to use. Joan Collins one year got caught and kicked out of the royal enclosure. But this was years ago. And you have to provide your, obviously display your badge as well. It's become very, very slick and professional. And it's a huge money-making enterprise for the king, but it is still unique. There's nowhere else on earth like, and the beauty of it is that people who you haven't seen for a year, you run into, and it's like a massive drinks party once a year, and it's very civilized. The royal enclosure has very strict rules that people have to abide by, and pretty much all people do abide by them, with the result that there is a degree of elegance that is quite unusual nowadays. And also in the public section, most people make a great effort. One or two make too great an effort, and one or two of them, and one occasionally or two in the royal enclosure, fall prey to this temptation as well, of trying to grab attention and so end up making exhibitions of themselves. With ridiculous clothes and stuff. But, so I hope that answers the question. I remember when friends of mine, after the revamp, saying, oh, it's so dreadful and blah, 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 I'm not going anymore. Alexandra Sykes, Mark Sykes' late wife, she said, oh, I think it's really important that people like us continue going, because otherwise the traditions are lost. And I actually agreed with that, and I do agree with that. And it's nice. So I hope that answers the question. MTM says, it was so nice to see Lady Gabriella Kingston at Royal Ascot. Yes, it was. Lady C, has anyone ever told you that Lady Gabriella looks like a younger version of yourself? No, no one has told me that. But thank you very much. What one or two people have said over the years is that I am a more attractive Queen Mary, that Queen Mary and I have a look, but that I'm more glamorous and attractive than she was. In fact, Queen Mary was, in my opinion, putting me aside, a very good-looking woman. But she was very shy, and she did not project beauty. She projected splendor, which is quite a difference. But physically, I think she was attractive. And one or two people have said over the years that there is a bit of a resemblance. So it would make sense that Gabriella and I would have a vague similarity if I look like her grandmother as well. But I don't think we really look alike, any of us. I think it's just that we are a particular type. You know, there's this sort of glam, pretty girl, or catalogue model type of looks. And then there's the patrician looks. And I think we all fall in the attractive patrician category. Well, Ella Windsor is actually a beautiful girl. And Queen Mary, I suppose, if she'd been able to glam up and she'd been able to titivate herself more than she was allowed to, and if she had been able to relax and enjoy her womanliness as opposed to her splendor, maybe she would have been hotter than she was. Sarah Ware says, your son is very handsome, referring, of course, to the photograph that was posted of Dima and myself. Well, I'm going to post a photograph of Misha, Dima, and myself, and you'll see that both my boys are handsome, each in his own and totally different way, but they are both very handsome boys. And they are, by and large, nice, decent, kind people. So I love my boys, and by and large, I think my boys are really good boys. And they're certainly good looking. Captain Nathan says, "Wowza, Lady C. You looked ravishing. Big block capitals and 3 exclamation marks. I am going to preen with delight at the compliment. Thank you to tell me this. And when I'll be 75 in a few weeks, is heaven on earth. What a gorgeous dress, and the hat. Truly magnificent. Thank you. Last June, my hubby and I were at the gate at Windsor when some of the carriages were picking up ladies and gents to bring them to Ascot. Such fun to catch that. Windsor was closed to tourists, so we unfortunately were unable to see inside. Guess we'll have to save our pennies and return. We adored London and England overall. My heritage is as wonderful as I'd hoped it would be. Hope you recover quickly from your injuries. Take care of yourself. We need your wonderful take on all things royal. Thank you." Well, we have a wonderful heritage. As with all heritages, it's mixed, but we have a wonderful heritage. Heritage is everything. It's not just that which is fashionable or fulfills the requirements of a particular category of individual at any given time. And we have a long and proud history, and we have wonderful traditions, and we also are a very progressive and inclusive, multicultural, multinational society. If we did not have such a solid base, starting with Magna Carta, but we have a solid base, and we have the ideal mix. You know, constitutional monarchy is the most, at this point in the world's history, the most effective form of government, because you don't keep on changing heads of state. And not only do you not keep on changing heads of state, which becomes very expensive, because then each head of state has to be pensioned off, has to be given suitable accommodation, has to have security for the rest of his life, his spouse's life, or her spouse's life, the children, blah, blah, blah. It becomes extremely expensive. And also it's patchier, as we can see from the late Queen. It is much patchier when you have endless heads of state. It's too patchy. If you have a good heads of state, and most monarchs nowadays are brought up to perform suitably, adequately, and actually superbly, and they do, they fulfill their role. And if they didn't, they wouldn't last very long, because they are there to an extent by the consent of the people and under sufferance, really. So we are really lucky. And yes, we have a wonderful heritage. And long may Britain survive as it is, keeping the old and moving on to that which is desirable and new. And at this point, I am going to ask Sean to post the video clips and the photographs. Okay? H. Minis says, could you please advise on something that is nothing to do with the pretenders to the throne? I noticed you wore a beautiful hat to Ascot. My son is getting married next year, and I would like to wear a proper hat to the wedding. But looking at current trends, it seems like the gradually fascinator, or dare I even mention the word hatinator, is topping the pates of many as headgear. Your opinion, please. Sending best wishes and a speedy recovery to you. Thank you. On Tuesday and on Thursday, I wore hats by Deida Acero. That's spelled Deida Acero. She is one of the most well-established milliners, but exclusive. She doesn't have many clients. I am sure that she would be delighted to do something for you if you got in touch with her and mentioned my name. She is a wonderful milliner. She has been around for a long time now, because Deida is, I'm sure, younger than I am. Everybody's younger than I am. But she's certainly been around for many years. And she is very gifted, and she does wonderful, wonderful work. So, Deida Acero. And I'm going to try, fingers crossed, to get her to provide me with some form of contact detail, which I will post now. Debbie Stewart says, it bothered me to see the Wales family getting on a helicopter together to leave London for home. I thought the late Queen Elizabeth II warned them against doing that. Well, that's what is said. But as I said at the time this subject came up, that William is Diana's son and can be quite obstinate as well. Charles can also be obstinate as well, and he's Charles's son as well. But Charles has usually been amenable to instructions of that nature, while William, who is an experienced helicopter pilot, obviously feels that as long as he's on board, nothing can happen. Experience has taught me that too much confidence can result in problems, but it certainly chills my bones to see the whole family traveling together, because there is, in my opinion, no way that the monarchy would survive if Harry were called upon to sit on the throne with, I'm a proud, confident woman of colour and so classy. My name is Queen Meghan. Oh, I'm a queen. Oh, bow down and scrape. And let's not forget, I'm a Nigerian. And let's not forget that when I say I'm a Nigerian, all those Nigerians who I visited, I had to point out to them, they're really honoured to have me as a Nigerian, because Nigerians, as they know only too well, are geniuses. All women are geniuses. They're all fabulous. They're all fabulously beautiful. They're all stylish. They're all challenging. They're all fantastic. And the one thing they aren't is modest. Fingers crossed that day never comes. Mary Sweeney says, the royal family of Great Britain should not be the few people we see on the balcony. I don't think the European royal family ideal is ideal. I couldn't agree more. They look like us, only in more expensive suits and dresses. What's going to happen is that what made Britain will slowly be pared away. All the pomp and ceremony, the uniforms, etc. All the things that people around the world love and that keep the history of the British people alive. I thought it was a big mistake for Charles to take away the Lords and their dress at his coronation. Believe me, my dear, many people did as well, me included. But that's something else again. I wish William would wear the kilt too. So do I. King of Scotland as well. If they make the mistake of diminishing the royal family in the public eye, it will fade away rather quickly. I hope Zara and Peter become part of the working royals. It would go a long way to making up for the teardowns of the Harkles. An awful lot of people would like to see Peter and Zara included. I think it's up to Peter and Zara as well, but it's not only up to them. You know, the fact of the matter is, William and Charles are as one with the idea that the slimmer the monarchy, the more the focus is on them and their progeny, is the better it's going to be. I don't agree. Many people don't agree. But one of the virtues of it is that a lot of the criticism about the expense of the monarchy will be dispelled. Except if you do the figures, the monarchy is cheaper than the French presidency, the Italian presidency, the American presidency. The American is the most expensive. Yes, William favours the Scandinavian model. And he seems to have not understood that none of those Scandinavian countries that he and his father looked to is as big as, in terms of population and in terms of importance generally, as the city of London. I mean, Denmark's population is half the size of London. Norway's is even smaller. I mean, but you know, it's their throne. And if they want to confuse it with one of the 16 that Harry and Meghan have in Montecito and treat it accordingly in terms of disrespecting or failing to acknowledge its larger relevance, that's up to them. Certainly people, even last week, I had somebody on the phone to me complaining bitterly about the coronation. And I said, well, if you think this one was bad, wait until the next one. It's going to be worse. Now, I'm not against inclusiveness, and I'm not against rewarding those who deserve to be rewarded and acknowledging those who deserve to be acknowledged. But to cut out so much of the old-fashioned beauty and glamour reduces the appeal. It makes the monarchy less splendid. It makes the monarchy veer towards the direction of the former Soviet satellites in terms of presentation of their leaders. But that's just my opinion. I'd love to know what yours is. Dr. Cede says, Dear Lady C, I hope you are healing from your recent fall. I am actually. This eye is now much less red. Oh, I still don't need makeup on this side. I just need to darken this side. Oh, and I'm feeling a little bit more myself today. But otherwise, I've definitely not been feeling myself. But let's not belabor the point. What are your thoughts on Charles Spencer's latest divorce, number 3, I believe, and his recently released book about his experiences at school? Many thanks. Well, I'm going to use a vulgarism because several people have said to me over the years, Charles Spencer is one of the biggest pricks that God put on this earth. I don't really know him. I had an extremely unpleasant experience with him when his sister first married the Prince of Wales, as he then was, and he was trying to throw his weight around at my expense. He stole a table of mine at a charity ball, and Peter Stringfellow, who owned the club, to give up my table and said that he would give me £50,000 if I agreed. And I rather stupidly said, well, if it means that much to you, you can have it for nothing. I should have said, yeah, I'll take the £50,000. But I need a check right now. I didn't. I was gracious. I was young. Was I stupid? Maybe. But anyway, I did it. I don't think I'd have even now accepted the money. First of all, the word in the drawing rooms is that Charles Spencer has now come up with someone else to blame. Remember, the royal family was to blame for every one of his sister's failings, notwithstanding the fact that he had refused to house his sister. I just make that point for what it's worth. He suffers from the Spencer bile, which Harry has inherited in such splendiferous measure. And evidently, he has developed a friendship with somebody with whom he works. And of course, he now has the perfect excuse for why his last 3 marriages and his many other relationships, because he was engaged, in quotes, to the granddaughter-in-law of a friend of mine, whom he ultimately broke up with. And he is, well, let me put it this way. If Charles Spencer was the last man on earth, I would stick to bananas. Let's put it that way. He is, but he's found a new way and a novel way of absolving himself of any responsibility for the character and the conduct which he has displayed for however many years now, because, I mean, he's well over 50. So maybe he's just reborn now that that's the message he's trying to give, now that he's found someone else to engage with. And so it's, of course, not his fault that he's worked himself into the 5th woman with whom he will end up having, more than likely, a formal relationship with 3 wives, 1 fiancé, whether official or not, I don't remember. But as I say, her grandson, my friend's grandson, was married to this girl who was widowed very young. And now he is blaming the mistress at his school, whom he has accused and who has categorically denied his accusations. And also, I make the point that he's had no compunction about possibly destroying the last years of her life. I mean, he was perfectly happy to try to destroy the royal family's reputation when he was supposedly giving a eulogy on behalf of his sister. I have good reports of him, ironically enough, from people who I know in the business, so to speak. And he's certainly a fan historian. But my instinct tells me that, yeah, he's a bit of a prick. Anthea Adesanya says, not only Star Magazine, you have People Magazine, page 6, US Weekly, and a whole plethora of pro-Sussex magazines, all reporting the king has pancreatic cancer and has just 2 years to live. Thank you very much for that information. It's always nice to know that if you are taking a drive in Australia, and somebody is exploring the territory of Australia, that the rumors are that any related issue that was discovered in Australia is linked directly to, shall we say, Siberia, or shall we say Saskatchewan, or shall we say Alberta, or shall we say Alaska. I'm going to make one little point which doctors will make. When investigations are done for the prostate and something shows up, it's in that region. The pancreas is nowhere near the prostate. Oh, the bladder is, and other organs are. But the pancreas, yeah. I took a trip to Australia, and all of a sudden, the lights in Saskatchewan were blinding me. Really well connected. I hope that puts things in perspective. Paulette Gray says, what is your opinion of the attacks disguised as concern for Prince George from News Group Corp? Well, I know you are referring to Daniela Elsa's article, or at least I think you are, which I have read, and because several people have asked me about this. Let's remember, first of all, that Rupert Murdoch is a Republican, not a member of the Republican Party. He values republicanism as a form of government, not monarchy. He wants elected heads of state, not hereditary heads of state. Then, of course, he would have been President Murdoch of the United Republic of Great Britain. And when he realized that wasn't going to work, he moved to America, where he decided he would wield his power there instead. So let's not forget that the Murdoch Corporation is by and large headed up by somebody who is not a pro-monarchist and is indeed an anti-monarchist. That doesn't mean that his publications don't cover all the bases, because they do. They have I wouldn't have said a pro-monarchist stance, but what they do is cover the monarchy in a very exacting manner, so that they make as much money out of it as possible. And if they can throw in a few red herrings and then throw down a few banana skins so you trip as you're eating the red herring and stinking to high heaven, so much the better. Well, Daniela Elsa doesn't seem to understand that, because she's on and on about, basically her theme is that poor Prince George deserves sympathy because he doesn't have a choice in his future. Daniela Elsa, as Harry has shown, and as King Edward VIII showed, and as the Grand Duke Constantine showed at the beginning of the 19th century, the brother of Emperor Alexander I and Emperor Nicholas I, You can abdicate your responsibilities. You don't have to be head honcho. So that's the first thing that she got wrong. The second thing that she got wrong is that if you're not trained for certain jobs properly and adequately from your young, if the plant isn't trained to follow the pattern, it won't do a good job when it is called upon. And if it does a good job, it does it uneasily. Harry's a perfect example of that. Queen Elizabeth II used to complain about the fact that Diana was spoiling William and Harry. She took William in hand. But William has always been a more serious and intelligent and responsive individual than Harry. Harry doesn't have the discipline. Had he been trained properly from birth, he might have had more discipline. In fact, he would have had more discipline. And also, Daniela Elsa doesn't seem to understand that with privilege comes responsibility. The fact that you're going to have a bigger life with better opportunities to do more good for people around you is not a disadvantage. It is an advantage. And you should be trained from your young to understand that you need to make sacrifices. Now, she makes out that George is looking terribly miserable. In fact, George, like William, has a very serious mien, and he has a serious streak in his personality. Many people do. That's not a failing. That's a virtue. You know, she just doesn't get it. She also seems to think that the fact that George is sedate, but without being deadly, and that he is well brought up. Now, I know people who know those children, and they say they are beautifully brought up, all three of them. William understands the downside of being badly brought up. Not only does he have his own experience to go off, and I'm not saying he was badly brought up all the time, because he was often well brought up, including by his mother. But William has the experience of having been brought up by a troubled woman. And that doesn't mean the troubled woman didn't bring him up well in many respects. But he also knows the downside of being brought up by a troubled woman. I speak from experience on that matter as well. And I can tell you, I know both sides. And my mother also, may I interject at this point, in some ways brought us up brilliantly and equipped us beautifully for our future. And this is what Daniela Elsa doesn't understand. That if you're going to be brought up for a certain sort of role in life, and George's role is a hell of a lot bigger than mine was ever going to be, but we were all properly brought up to live up to our, what in those days was called place or position. You need to be from your young. I did it with my children as well. I would say to them things like, you know, sorry, why would you not be expected to make a sacrifice? You know, why do you think everything should go your way? Why should everything fall in your lap? Why should you always have everything you want? You need in life to understand that there's a downside and there's an upside. And you may in some ways be privileged, But in other ways, you have to earn that privilege. And now sit down and behave yourself and act accordingly. And if you're not brought up from your young to do that, unless you are very ambitious and want a splendid position, you are going to be ill-equipped for your future. I mean, Daniela Elsa obviously doesn't realize that Rupert Murdoch's children have all been brought up to live up to their responsibilities as heirs of Rupert Murdoch, his children and his grandchildren. She doesn't realize that. She's acting as if privilege is a burden and onerous. Yeah, it has its burdens, but quite frankly, given a choice between plenty and starvation, I'll take plenty very much. Thank you very much. And then she was really sort of saying nonsense that maybe all of this has nothing to do with the throne sitting that awaits him. Because he was looking at the game and not making an exhibition of himself. Oh, look at me. But very, very properly brought up and looking attentively and not acting out. Oh, he's supposed to act out. And then maybe that means that he's doing the right thing. She says, the throne sitting that awaits him, and he is stressed about his mother currently being treated for cancer, or he failed his maths test, or his parents said no to his request to take and wait for the nasty crack, his favourite footman to school to carry his backpack. I mean, that's just class prejudice and envy. And as Thomas Sowell has recently pointed out, the envy that proliferates in this world nowadays and is regarded as desirable instead of being the covetousness and sinful attitude that it is. His favourite footman to school to carry his backpack. I mean, does she realise how nasty she's been? It's like, I remember when I was launching my first Diana book, an Australian journalist. No, it wasn't. He asked me something and it wasn't the Australian. One of the English journalists said to me, "So, Lady Colin, does the butler bring in the latest chapter that he has typed with your breakfast?" I mean, the sneering, like, is it any easier for somebody who is privileged to walk a mile than somebody who isn't? I would have thought the effort was the same, irrespective of the rank of the person. And to actually then be so snobbish as to think that if you have accomplished something yourself because you as a human being accomplished it, it should be denigrated because you have a privilege? Oh, I don't think so. I mean, there's a very sick, nasty element to all of this. And I think it is reprehensible. But the Murdoch press is often reprehensible. On the other hand, it can sometimes be very good. And I certainly don't think that they can be accused of sucking up to the royals. But to be berating and lambasting a child for being well behaved shows to what extent Daniela Elsa has her values totally screwed up. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, would you please care to send in questions and comments so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about? Thank you. Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye-bye.